March 13, 1943. 2:17 hours. North Atlantic, west of Ireland. The first thing you notice is the quiet. Not silence. Just the layered hush of a U-boat running on the surface in the small hours, somewhere between black sky and blacker sea. Type WWII 553 rides low in the water, deck slick with spray, diesel exhaust feathering away into the night. The bow knifes through a steady swell, sending white foam curling off into the darkness. Above, a sky full of hard, cold stars looks close enough to touch. On the bridge, Captain Lieutenant Eric Mahler stands in his greatcoat, scarf pulled up over his mouth, eyes on the horizon. His cap is jammed down tight, headphones crooked over one ear. The Atlantic wind bites every bit of exposed skin. You can almost taste the salt on your teeth, feel it freezing in the lines of your face. Behind him, the watch crew huddle into their pea coats, binoculars pressed to their eyes. One man sweeps the port quarter, another the starboard, a third dead ahead. They all see the same thing. Nothing. Just waves and starlight. Perfect hunting weather. Below, the diesels thrum through the pressure hull, a steady, living heartbeat. The smell down there is old oil, sweat, and rubber gaskets, but up here on the bridge you get clean cold air and the illusion of space. Mahler prefers it up here. On the chart table in the cramped tower below, the navigator has drawn a careful line towards a position given just hours earlier by Befehlshaber der Unterseeboot, BDU, the U-boat High Command. A convoy. Eastbound. Fat with tankers and freighters. Somewhere out there in the black. Mahler taps ash from his cigarette over the bridge combing and glances at his wristwatch, its luminous hands a soft, ghostly green. Any more traffic from BDU? He calls down into the tower. The funkmat, radio operator, leans back from the set, cable of his headphones taut. Negative, Herr Captain Lieutenant, he answers. Last signal was Wolfpack deployment, Rudel, Seawolf, converging on the convoy. We're on correct course. Wolfpack. That word used to taste like victory. Back in 1940, 1941, when U-boat commanders like Otto Kretschmer, Gunther Prien and Heinrich Bleikrot carved their names into tonnage charts, Wolfpacks meant luxury. Multiple U-boats sharing a convoy, surfacing on dark nights, guns and torpedoes tearing ships apart while destroyers thrashed helplessly in the wrong part of the ocean. The Germans called it the Gluck-like Zeit. The happy time. Mahler came up in that era, reading Kretschmer's patrol reports like gospel. One torpedo, one ship. Shadow the convoy, radio BDU, bring in the pack. Radios were power. Radios were how you turned one submarine into 15. Tonight, as he scans the horizon, they still think that way. Somewhere behind him in the wireless compartment, the Enigma machine sits on its bolted table, lamp hooded, rotors gleaming. Mahler doesn't know that every time he touches that machine, every time he keys his wireless to tell BDU convoy sighted, he's lighting a tiny, invisible lantern in the sky. A little point of here I am. A bearing focus. A ghost. Not yet. Right now, he just feels the old predator's surge of anticipation. Lights out, men, he murmurs. We're close now. Heavier air. Smell it? The youngest lookout, barely 20, sniffs reflexively. He can't smell anything but salt and diesel. Mahler can. He spent so many nights out here that tiny differences feel like shouts. Oh, coal smoke. The faint change in sea state where dozens of hulls are pushing water at once. There's something ahead. He brings his binoculars up again, glass colder than his gloves. Nothing. But the feeling is there. Halten Sie die Augen offen, he mutters. Keep your eyes open. Down in the radio room, a burst of high-frequency static crackles through the headphones. The funkmat straightens. Morse, he says softly. Short burst. Probably another boat reporting in. He scribbles on his pad, decoding by ear. Convoy located. Heading east. Request further boats. Another U-boat out there has found the prey. Perfect. Mahler's fingers itch to reach for the transmitter. That's how the game is played. One boat sights, calls the pack, holds contact. Others close in. Chaos and fire follow. He keys the intercom. Radio, he says. Prepare to transmit position to BDU. Short signal only. Maximum discipline. Jahl, Herr Captain Lieutenant. The funkmat reaches for the Enigma, fingers practiced as he sets rotors and plugs. He doesn't see thousands of miles away, the spidery curve of HF/DF antennas on corvettes and destroyers, the paired ears, that are listening not for what he says, but where he says it from. Not yet. Mahler ducks into the tower, shoulders brushing steel, and leans into the radio room. Keep it under 20 seconds, he says. No more. The funkmat nods, eyes on the clock. Mahler goes back up, climbs the ladder, and is swallowed once more by starlit wind. Ready when you are, comes the voice through the speaking tube. Mahler looks around. Still no horizon lights. Still no search beams. Still just the soft hiss of the sea sliding past the hull. He feels that old, familiar arrogance rise in his chest. We are the hunters, he tells himself. They never see us coming. Send, he says. Below, the funkmat flips the toggle. U-553's radio spits a short, intense burst of energy into the night, high-frequency waves racing out from the WWII antenna, rippling across hundreds of miles of empty ocean. The encoded letters themselves are gibberish to anyone without the right Enigma settings. But the signal? The signal is loud and clear. On a British escort in a convoy dozens of miles away, a ratings pencil jumps on a HF/DF display. The bearing needle flicks, settles, then steadies. "Spike on HF, sir," the operator calls. Short German transmission. Bearing 330 degrees. The destroyer's captain, standing in a bridge lit by red night lights, glances at the repeater. Short signal. Exactly what the U-boats were told to send. Exactly what the Huffduff operators have trained for. He marks a line out from the convoy position on the chart. One stroke. One ghost bearing. And in that stroke, U-553, utterly convinced she is still a phantom in the dark, has taken one small step toward being found. Back on the German bridge, the transmission ends. The Funkmat's voice comes up the tube. "Message sent, Herr Kapitän Lieutenant. 17 seconds. Gut," Mahler says. "Back to listening. Let's see who comes to the party." He feels better now. Like part of the pack again. He doesn't know that somewhere an Allied officer has just said the same thing he used to say about convoys. "We've got him." Somewhere along this line. The hunter just shouted his position. On U-553 the night still feels safe. Mahler lights another cigarette, cupping the match against the wind, eyes on the emptiness. He exhales, smoke torn away. Soon, he murmurs. Tonight someone burns. He just hasn't realized yet. Might be him. Same night. 2:43 hours. North Atlantic, west of Ireland. On the British destroyer HMS Calder, the sea looks the same. Black. Featureless. Cruel. But in the tiny HF/DF shack just off the bridge, it sounds different. The compartment is barely larger than a wardrobe. Two sailors are crammed in with a set of dials, a cathode ray tube, headphones, and the dark, spidery frame of the Huffduff antenna wiring overhead. A rating with pencil in hand stares at the swinging bearing needle. "Short HF burst, sir," he says, voice low but tight. "Definitely German. Bearing 330 from convoy center. Same as 5 minutes ago but closer." The HF/DF officer leans over his shoulder, reading the angle, checking the clock. "That's our friend again," he murmurs. He's talking to BDU. He steps out onto the bridge, where the captain stands in a pool of dim red light, oilskin hood up, binoculars around his neck. "Well?" the captain asks. "Same bearing, sir," the HF/DF man says. "Within a few degrees." He's out there holding contact and calling his mates in. Likely a Type 7. The captain nods once. He's done this enough times now that it almost feels unfair. Almost. He turns to the navigator. "Plot another line, 330 from convoy center," he orders. "Assume he's running on the surface. 18 knots, perhaps less." The navigator's pencil scratches on the chart. Two thin lines, slightly separated, now cross the empty blue of the North Atlantic. He taps the space between them. "There, sir," he says. "Somewhere in this box. 30 miles. Maybe less." The captain looks at the plotted point. Miles of cold water. One invisible boat. He doesn't need to see the U-boat. He just needs to be on the same bearing at the right time. "Signal to Keppel," he says. "We'll detach a screen. Increase to 20 knots. HF/DF to continue watching. If Jerry speaks again, I want the needle before he's finished his sentence." He steps to the bridge wing, peers into the darkness where the convoy's dimmed lamps make a low, moving galaxy on the sea. "All right, lads," he says quietly. "Time to hunt the hunter." On U-553 Mahler still feels like the hunter. The air has changed. Now ahead of them there's no mistaking it. Oil smoke. Coal smoke. That peculiar, metallic tang of many propellers working at once. He peers through the Uzio optics mounted on the bridge, sweeping the dark horizon. At first there's nothing. Then, right at the edge of perception, a glow. Faint. Oh. Like someone has drawn a thin, luminous line between sea and sky. "Lichter," one of the lookouts whispers. "Lights." Mahler adjusts the focus, breath clouding in the eyepiece. There. Tiny pricks in the distance, shielded, hooded, but not invisible. The convoy. He feels the familiar cold surge in his chest. Not fear. Something sharper. This is the moment he joined the service for. The moment all the drills and lectures point to. "Convoy voyous," he says into the bridge voice pipe. "Convoy ahead. Range, 8, maybe 10,000 meters. Zigzagging." Below, the navigator pins a new mark on the chart. The Funkmat, listening in case BDU responds, hears nothing but hiss. Mahler lowers the binoculars. "Very well," he says softly. "We shadow. We stay out of silhouette, we stay on the surface, and we call the others in." He considers sending another signal. Tiny short. Confirming his position. Then shrugs. They already know he's here. He reaches for the voice pipe again. "Radio," he says. "No more transmissions unless BDU orders." We're close enough now. Joel, comes the reply. Radio silence. It's almost funny. He's already betrayed himself. He just doesn't know it. 3:21 hours. Destroyer HMS Calder, closing bearing 330. Spray lashes the bridge windows as Calder shoulders aside the Atlantic swell, bow light hooded, running dark at 20 knots. HF/DF, the captain calls. The operator leans from the shack. Sir, short burst again, he says, raising his voice over the wind. We barely caught it. Bearing steady 330. He hasn't moved much. Still talking to someone? The captain's mouth twists into a humorless smile. Good, he says. Means he thinks he's alone. He glances at the air radar repeater, set in surface search mode for this sprint. Nothing yet. But he knows what he's looking for. A tiny smear on the screen that shouldn't be there. A sliver of steel on black water. He taps the binnacle. Another hour, he says. Maybe less if he keeps chatting. The ocean is big. HF/DF has made it smaller. Back on U-553, Mahler has no idea that the ocean has shrunk around him. He watches the convoy lights grow, faint dots becoming small, blurred shapes through the optics. Mastheads. Hull shadows. Distance, he asks. The Oberstürman, peering at the horizon with his own glass, makes a rough call. 5,000 meters, he says. Maybe less. They're zigzagging. If we cut in here, we're in a good position by dawn. Mahler nods. Prepare for surface attack, he says. Night run. We slice across the columns. 2 torpedoes, then we dive before the escorts wake up. He has done this before. He knows the dance steps. Forward torpedo room, he says into the intercom. Status. 4 eels ready, Herr Captain Lieutenant, the IWO answers from below. G7A steamers in tubes 1 and 2. Electric in 3 and 4. All checks complete. Gut. Bridge out. He takes one last long look at the hull shadows ahead. Fat silhouettes. Slow. Blind. We'll show them who owns the night, he murmurs. You can almost feel how sure he is. How sure they all were. For 2 years the darkness belonged to the Grey Wolves. The darkness answers. Not the way he expects. Horn C, one of the lookouts suddenly snaps, hand up. Listen. Mahler freezes, head tilted. At first all he hears is the soft hiss of waves and the low hum of his own diesels. Then, faint from somewhere off their starboard bow, the distant drumming of another engine. Fast. Hard. Not the slow, laborious churn of a merchantman. Something sharper. A destroyer. He feels the hairs on the back of his neck rise. They're farther out, he says quickly. Zigzagging wide. He's just crossing our sound. Then he stops. Because the sound isn't crossing. It's growing. Getting louder. Coming toward them. Too straight. Too deliberate. As if someone has drawn a line from that unseen ship right to where U-553 cuts the waves. What is it? The youngest lookout whispers. Mahler doesn't answer. He lifts the binoculars, scans starboard. Nothing. Then, a speck. Low to the water. Coming fast. No lights. No signal. Just a wedge of approaching darkness. The destroyer knows exactly where to look. Alarm. Mahler barks, every nerve suddenly on fire. Crash dive. Now, now, now. The word ripples down the boat like an electric shock. Klaxons bray. Men tumble from bunks. In the control room, sailors slam valves, spin wheels, eyes wide. Flood forward tanks. Bow planes to dive. Close all upper hatches. On the bridge, Mahler takes one last incredulous glance at that oncoming shadow. They're coming straight for us, he mutters. Impossible. They can't see us yet. They can't. The sea around them explodes into foam as U-553's bow begins to bite under. Men scramble down the conning tower ladder, boots slamming rungs. The last man through the hatch hauls it shut above him, spinning the wheel, dog locking it as seawater begins to roar over the bridge. Depth 20 meters, the diving officer shouts. Negative buoyancy achieved. The boat groans as she angles down, gauges spinning, the familiar creak of steel under changing pressure singing in the hull. For a heartbeat, there is only the rush of the dive. Then, faintly through the hull, comes another sound. Propellers. Fast. Overhead. Passing almost directly above. What in God's name? Franz, the torpedo mechanic, breathes. Mahler grips the periscope column, knuckles white. They came straight for us, he says slowly, disbelief thick in his voice. No radar sweep, no flares. Like we were painted on their chart. He doesn't know it yet. He's only heard the first hint. Above, on that destroyer's bridge, the HF/DF officer is already marking another bearing, ready to tell his captain. He dove there, sir. There. Right where the ghost bearing points. The U-boat falls. Not like a stone. More like a reluctant elevator whose cables you can hear stretching. Angle 15 degrees down. Depth gauges spinning. The deck tilts, men staggering, hands finding pipes and brackets in the dim red light. 15, 18, 20 meters, the diving officer calls, eyes flicking between instruments. Leveling off. Hold at 20, Mahler orders. We don't go deeper until we know what's above us. The diesels have cut. In their place, the steady whine of the electric motors and the softer rush of water over the hull fill the boat with a strange hush. Without the diesels pounding, every other sound suddenly seems louder. The creak of hull plates adjusting to pressure. The soft drip of condensation. The anxious breathing of 45 men. In the bow, a spoon clinks against a bulkhead and someone swears. Rua, a petty officer snaps. Quiet. In the sound room, the Horchgerat, the hydrophone, operator sits hunched with his rubber earpieces clamped tight, jaw set. He ticks a pencil against a strip of paper in time with what he hears. Screws. Fast. He begins to count blades, speed, direction in his head like a mantra. Contact, starboard bow, he calls into the voice pipe. Single set of propellers. Approaching. Very fast. The chief leans over him. How fast, he asks. Destroyer fast, the operator says. And he's not zigzagging randomly. Bearing changes, straight. Too straight. In the control room, Mahler feels the words like a chill. Course, he asks. The operator licks his lips. Bearing changing, but staying steady, he says slowly. He's turning to keep us ahead of his bow. He knows we're here, Herr Captain Lieutenant. He's driving on us. Mahler stares at the bulkhead, seeing through steel and seawater. He hears again the diesel note, loud and hungry, coming toward them with purpose. How? One of the younger officers breathes. We were on the surface, invisible. Night, no moon. They couldn't have seen. Enough, the chief snaps. But his eyes flick to Mahler, asking the same question. The answer for now is just a knot in Mahler's gut. Above them, the destroyer thunders on. On HMS Calder, the war is conducted with headphones and shock. In the Aztec hut, sonar to you and me, a rating leans over the set, one hand on the range dial, the other on the training wheel, headphones tight against his ears. He sends a pulse of sound into the water. A sharp ping that echoes through the hull. He waits. A moment later, a faint, returning ping answers from below. Contact bearing 295. He rattles off. Range, 1,800 yards. Depth shallow. He's just gone under, sir. The Aztec officer scribbles on a slate. On the bridge, the captain takes the report, eyes never leaving the dark water ahead. We have him, he says. Dead ahead, shallow. He dove too late. He does the quick mental arithmetic every anti-sub skipper learns by heart now. Speed. Range. Blind spot under the bow before the next ping. Steady on course, he orders. Prepare to run over him. Depth charge pattern, Charlie. Fuses shallow. All hands ready. In the stern, sailors in duffel coats and steel helmets stand by the rails, hands on depth charge throwers and stern racks, the heavy drums already set. Little metal dials on each can are twisted to a shallow depth. 100 feet. Enough to hammer something at 20 meters like a fist slamming a tin. Below, on U-553, the hydrophone is suddenly deaf. Lost contact, the operator says. He's too close above. Our own hull is masking. The boat is blind. You can almost feel everyone holding their breath, listening with their teeth. Hold course, Mahler says. His voice is level, but a vein in his neck stands out. No turns yet. He expects us to zigzag. The chief raises an eyebrow. And if he expects us to hold course, he mutters. Mahler doesn't answer. He grips the periscope column until his knuckles whiten. Through the overhead plating, faint and distorted, comes the far-off roar of propellers taking on a new note as the destroyer's bow climbs and falls over each wave. Then another sound joins it. A metallic clatter and roll above the stern. Depth charges, the first officer whispers. The boat tenses. Time stretches. On Calder's stern, the charges roll from their racks, plopping into the sea one by one, dark, heavy cylinders plunging down, each trailing a faint trail of bubbles. Kitchup, kitchup, kitchup. On the throwers, others arc out to either side, splashing down in a widening semicircle. An underwater minefield, timed to explode at the captain's chosen depth. Down below, on U-553, no one hears them fall. They only feel the weight. And then, the world ends in white noise. A hammer blow smashes the hull from the starboard side as the first charge detonates. The lights flicker. Men are hurled against bulkheads. Tools leap from benches. A light bulb shatters, glass spraying. A second blast, closer, slams into them from below, the pressure wave making ears pop painfully. The hull screams, an unearthly metallic shriek, as steel flexes beyond what it was meant to do. 18 meters, the diving officer shouts, fighting to read the shaking gauges. Hold her, the chief roars. Blow a little aft, only a little. Water jets from a burst pipe near the galley, spraying across a sailor's back in a freezing arc. Someone yells. Someone else slips and falls. Rua verdammt, the chief bellows. Silence. Air fills with dust and the sharp tang of ozone. A third charge goes off almost directly above the control room. The overhead buckles, bolts groaning, a rivet popping with a high, angry snap. Paint flakes fall like snow. The U-boat lurches downward. 22 meters. 24. Compens. Mahler tastes blood in his mouth. He's bitten his tongue without realizing it. He clings to the periscope column as if it's the only solid thing left in the world. In his mind, he's seeing an impossible picture. A destroyer running straight to where they had been on the surface, turning, dropping its pattern not in guesses, but in a tight fan over a point someone has already marked. How did they do that? He mutters, half to himself. No one answers. Not yet. They're too busy not dying. On HMS Calder, the blasts are distant thumps underfoot felt more than heard. The captain watches the water astern through his binoculars. Dark. Then as the last charges go off, white plumes leap into the air, backlit by the faint starlight. The sea boils for a moment, then begins to settle. Astic report, he calls. The reply comes a moment later, calm and professional. Contact lost during attack, sir. Likely due to wash. Reacquiring. The operator sweeps the beam again, sending out fresh pings. Down below, metal and water answer. Contact regained, he says, surprised. Range increasing. Bearing shifting aft. He's still alive, sir. Going deeper and changing course. I think we heard him, but he's moving. The captain exhales slowly. They're getting trickier. All right then. We can be patient too. Come starboard 15 degrees. We'll box him in. Keep HF/DF watch. If he talks again, I want to see the needle dance. To him, this is a problem of geometry and endurance. To the men in the battered tube below, it's something else. On U-553, gauge is steady again, but the boat feels different. Bruised. Damage report, Mahler orders, wiping dust from his face. His ears ring. The pressure has squeezed his chest tight. Minor leak starboard ballast tank, comes the answer. Pipes burst in the galley and aft heads. No structural failure yet, Herr Captain Lieutenant. No hull breaches. Electric motors functioning. We can still dive. And the men? Shaken, the chief says. No serious injuries. They'll be sore tomorrow. If there is a tomorrow. A nervous chuckle ripples through the control room. It dies quickly. Mahler leans toward the hydrophone operator's alcove. What about him? He asks. Our friend above? The operator swallows. Still there, he says. He passed over us, made one attack, then turned. Now his screws are circling. He's not charging ahead as the others used to. He knows we're under him. He's following. He looks up, eyes wide. It's like we lit a signal light for him before we dived, he says. Like he had our number written down before he got here. The words hang in the stale air. No one says radio. No one says HF/DF. Most of them haven't even heard the term. They've been warned vaguely about enemy listening stations, told to keep signals curse, short. 40 seconds. Then 20. Tonight, 17. And still the destroyer came straight. Maybe he heard our diesels, one sailor offers weakly. We were on the surface. In this sea, the hydrophone man snaps. At that range? No. He knew where to come. He came at us like we were on rails. Mahler stares at the depth gauge, the needle hovering. Get us down to 50 meters, he says quietly. Slow turns. We change course staggered. Make it harder for his Astic.